Hello everyone, welcome back. So today we are diving into a classic Indian espionage thriller that's all about secret suspense and high stakes missions. So if you are a fan of spy novels or stories with an Indian twist, then you are in for a treat. Let's begin with the author introduction. So Manohar Malgonkar was an Indian novelist, short story writer and essayist who explored India's social, political and cultural transformations, and it was particularly during the British colonial period and post-independence era that he gained a prestigious recognition. Malgonkar was born in a princely family in Karwar, Karnataka. And obviously, his aristocratic background and first hand experiences of British India and princely states informed much of his writing, especially his nationalistic feelings and identity. He served in the Indian Army, attaining the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, and this military experience is often reflected in his works, especially Spy in Amber. So, what are the major works of Malgonkar? Distant Drum, Combat of Shadows, The Princess, A Bend in the Ganges, Spy in Amber, Devil's Win, Cactus Country Inside Goa. These are his major writings. And when it comes to this particular novel, Spy in Amber, it was first published in 1971 and it was set during the time when tensions between India and China were at its peak. So the story revolves around the protection of a Tibetan monastery's treasure from the Chinese spies. The plot reveals Ragyabas monastery, which has a treasure worth millions in its possession. So we learn that the head lama receives orders from the Panchen lama. So Panchen lama possesses all those treasures, right? So the head lama receives orders from the Panchen lama to safeguard the possessions from the Chinese. His Holiness, the Panchen Lama, intends to send the possessions to the Indian government for safekeeping the possessions and asks the head Lama or requests him to wait further for another 3 months for upcoming orders to get the aid of the Indian government. Panchen Lama, His Holiness himself is under pressure at Delhi due to political tensions, right? So the plot unfurls the secret agents from China intruding the Indian territory so as to thwart the Indian military intelligence. So let's learn about the treasure in the Ragyabas monastery. So the Ragyabas monastery was built around 2000 years ago and the order of the Amber Lamas was established then. The monastery stands amidst the Himalayan mountains in a no man's land inaccessible to either China or India. So the rations for the monks of the Ragyabas monastery is usually carried by small caravans of mules and sheep. Within the remote rooms of the monastery lies heaps of precious stones and ornaments, gold coins, trays of pearl, emeralds and rubies that has to be guarded against the Chinese. The lamas are ordered to wait for further orders until the feast of the green serpent. So the treasure becomes the complex target involving the Chinese spies and Indian intelligence. So let's learn about the characters connected with the Indian intelligence. So they are Colonel Jeet Mansingh. He's actually a prominent character, a skilled Indian intelligence agent, right? And he is up to a dangerous mission to retrieve the valuable Buddhist artifacts from a Tibetan monastery. And then comes Air Marshal P. Kirpal. He's otherwise called as PK. So he's a high-ranking Indian Air Force officer. And he is also very much involved in the covert mission to Tibet as he provides logistical and tactical support for the espionage operation, right? And then comes Nirupama Pandit. She is actually a nurse serving the Indian Army. She treats Jeet's injury and befriends him. She also joins the endeavors with PK's permission and helps throughout the novel to track the Chinese spies. So she's often called Rupa by Jeet very fondly. And then comes the characters connected with the Chinese spies. So the principal or the most dangerous character is Chomo Zhang. He's a Chinese agent. So he tracks the Indian intelligence and is a gruesome murderer who kills Pushkar Bhatta and Gomti Prasad. And he also tracks Jeet so as to cover the treasure of the Ragyabas monastery. So the head of the Chinese agent, so he's known as Li Heng, he actually sends Chomo to India to loot the treasure from the Ragyabas monastery. And then comes Pempem Kachin. So Pempem is a beautiful Chinese agent and the mistress of Li Heng. So she also comes to India to grab the treasure in favor of the Chinese. So she uses her beauty and painting skills to deceive her opponents. Chomo Jang is a subordinate, right? And both of them equally play a pivotal role in the undercover operations. And then comes Tien An. So Tien An is Chomo's subordinate and he carries out all the orders of Chomo very tactfully, especially in bombing Jeet's car and kidnapping Nirupama later towards the end of the novel, right? And then comes Victor Easy. So he doesn't appear much in the novel, so he gets murdered. He is also a Chinese agent who works in favor of the Indian intelligence, so he has a very close association with PK, and he sends messages regarding the Chinese spies and all. And then he gets murdered by Team Chomo and Pempem. Okay, so now who are the characters regarding the connecting the Ragyabas monastery? So the head Lama, so he is in charge of the Panchen Lama's possessions. He gathers all the monks during the feast of the White Lion every year to check whether everything is in place. He takes the Panchen Lama's orders and guards the treasure and waits to transfer it to the Indian government as soon as he receives the order. So his discussion with Gomti Prasad and Pushkar Bhatta clarifies the tensions between India and China and the need to safeguard the treasures. So what about Pushkar Bhatta and Gomti Prasad? So both are monks from the Ragyabas monastery who later gets killed by Chomo Jang. So we'll get into the summary. So now we could see that the head Lama orders Pushkar Bhatta and Gomti Prasad to make arrangements to meet the Indian government officials to report on the treasure. So he says that this is the order of the Panchen Lama to safeguard the treasure from the Chinese, and the burden has to be entrusted to the Indian government, but not now, after 3 months. So the head Lama also suggests that both Gomti and Pushkar must stay away from each other, don't meet now and then, he says, so that they can very easy, if they does so, they can easily distract the Chinese spies and complete the allotted task very peacefully. But both Gomti and Pushkar are advised to make a report to the Indian government and bring the Indian officials after the stipulated time of 3 months. So this is the task allotted to both the monks Gomti Prasad and Pushkar Bhatta. So now we are introduced to a meeting between PK and Jeet. So here we understand that Jeet, Colonel Jeet Man Singh, he gets training in a commando school called Murder Alley, where soldiers are trained to kill swiftly, silently and weapon free. So now we could see that upon an upcoming mission, both Jeet and PK meet each other. And PK says that he has recently received a coded message from Victor Easy, who is introduced as an Anglo-Burmese sergeant. And we are also told that PK, Victor Easy and Chomo Jang, they three have worked together during war times. And Jeet was very much astonished to learn that Victor Easy, PK and Chinese operative named Chomo Jang, they have collaborated to destroy the Chong Bridge, disrupting Japanese forces. So now Victor Easy is very much affiliated or closely linked with Chinese Security Bureau, and he has sent an urgent message to PK. Jeet is actually assigned to contact Victor Easy in strict secrecy to obtain critical information. So obviously Victor Easy wanted to send certain informations, and it's up to Jeet to receive the informations in secret. So now Jeet is quite curious about Chomo. So now he asks PK, see, who is that Chomo Jang? And PK reveals that he has lost track of him. So he also describes Chomo Jang as a cold-blooded warrior, and he's actually notorious or very much famous for strangling his enemies on one hand, and on the other hand he used to whistle an American marching song which appears quite brutal, right? So he was very much famous for that. And now we understand that Victor Easy is murdered. So back in China, the beautiful Pempem, who is cunning as well, she befriends Victor and spies him. And she understands that Victor is sending messages to the Indian intelligence. So on the other hand, Victor is quite unaware of Pempem's cunning nature. And soon he is getting captured by Chomo Jang. So Chomo gives orders to shoot Victor, and Victor dies. So Chomo finds that Colonel Jeet Man Singh has been assigned as Victor's contact in India. So now what will Chomo do? He will track Jeet, isn't it? So Chomo obviously tracks Jeet, whom Victor is about to meet. So he orders his subordinate Tien An to kill Jeet. And so what will Tien An do now? He will start following Jeet, isn't it? So he starts following Jeet. He sets a bomb in Jeet's fort car. However, Jeet jumps aside and survives, leaving an impression to the outside world that he is dead. So here we could find that Tien An and his team believe that Jeet is dead, but on the other hand side, Jeet is taking treatment from the Indian military hospital for his injured arm. So PK checks on him now and then whether Jeet is alright. And the nurse Nirupama takes good care of him. So meanwhile, Victor before his death has sent another message to PK, and after his death PK has received it, and the message says that two monks, Pushkar Bhatta and Gomti Prasad, they are going to be murdered by Chomo, by the Chinese agent. So now the fact that Chomo Jang is a Chinese agent and he's against the intelligence agent is unrevealed here, and PK also knows nothing about it, but the only message that he receives is Pushkar Bhatta and Gomti Prasad are to be killed. So this message gives a warning that the two monks Pushkar and Gomti are to be killed by the Chinese spies. So here Chomo makes his entry into India, and so he takes up the disguise of a Tibetan monk and he crosses the borders. And so in the guise of the monk, Chomo gets to meet Pushkar Bhatta. He develops a false conversation with Pushkar, right? So he talks about Tibet, he talks about the monastery, but you could find that due to all the restrictions, Pushkar Bhatta is not ready to talk about all those official matters here. But still, he was unaware that Chomo is going to be a murderer. So he develops a kind of a soft conversation with him. And later, when Pushkar was unaware, Chomo strangles him, pushes him into the river, and walks away whistling the American marching tune. So Jeet learns about the death of Pushkar from the newspaper, and he understands the danger. So you have to remember, according to the outside world, Jeet is almost dead. He's dead actually. So he's actually very secretly taking treatment from the Indian military hospital. So Jeet immediately wanted to take part into the mission, and he suggests to PK that if the nurse Nirupama accompanies him for a week, because he can't drive now, and if the nurse accompanies him, it would be of great help for him so that he can get up into the undercover operations, right? So here he suggests to PK that if the nurse Nirupama accompanies him for a week, the commanding officer will permit him to carry out a secret operation. So now he was granted, and Nirupama happily accepts to accompany Jeet on this risky commitment. So now we are introduced to Pempem. So Pempem comes to live in India in an apartment in Olympic Chambers near Qutub Minar in New Delhi. So she lives with her cat Ting Ling. She's very much fond of this cat, right? So along with many other portraits, actually there is a half-drawn portrait of Gomti Prasad in the apartment of Pempem. So meanwhile, you could see that Nirupama and Jeet follow Gomti Prasad when he goes into Pempem's apartment. And Gomti meets Pempem in her apartment and urges her to finish the portrait. So you could find that both Pempem and Gomti hold up romantic conversations too. So then he invites her to lunch near the Qutub Minar, and she happily agrees. So Nirupama leaves Jeet in the car, and she enters Olympic Apartments to glance at the name board. So she's much curious about what is going to happen, and she's off the task to help Jeet in his endeavors, right? So on the way she meets a stranger, Actually, it is Chomoja, and she is very much unaware of that. Even PK and Jeet doesn't know that Chomo is involved in the Chinese spying things, and she could see that that particular stranger is carrying a typewriter, and he was also whistling a tune, and this particular character stays strong into her mind, and because the tune that the man was whistling was quite different and unique. And now Chomo comes to Pempem's flat, and they both exchange the typewriters, within which a book is concealed. So this book contains a message, and they both try to decode the message. So the secret message reveals words like kitchen, communal kitchen, and they both keep on decoding the message. So actually, this particular kitchen, this word is linked to Yangtze restaurant. So it is the restaurant where all these Chinese they plan together. So they all work in that particular restaurant, and they make this important decisions over there. So these words suggest that particular restaurant. Meanwhile, Nirupama climbs the nearby Jantar Mantar, and using her binoculars, she starts tracking Gomti's portrait in a particular flat, and she also sees an empty typewriter cases on the bed. So now she remembers that particular stranger, Chomo, carrying a typewriter case, and she could also find Gomti's portrait over there. So Gomti was one they saw on the way, right? So she links both these things, and Chomo and Pempem now plan to kill Gomti while she goes along with Gomti for lunch. So we learned that Gomti called her for lunch, right? So now on this particular time, Chomo plans to kill Gomti. Also, it is revealed that Chomo develops a sensual liking for Pempem very much early, right? And she angrily calls him a toad. Pempem doesn't like Chomo. Obviously, they both plan together about all these killing and murders, but still she doesn't have any kind of liking towards Chomo. But she calls him a toad, and you could find that Chomo instead challenges that one day Pempem will come begging after him. So here, mark these words, this will happen. Okay, so now Gomti's murder. Gomti and Pempem head out together, right, in the point of having lunch. So now giving Jeet the chance to secure a key to Pempem's apartment for Nirupama. So now what does Jeet do? He gives a fake key to Nirupama to explore Pempem's apartment, while Pempem and Gomti get out for having lunch. And Nirupama was very carefully instructed to search certain things in their absence. So at the picnic spot, so Pempem brings Gomti to a picnic spot along with an unfinished portrait, and asks Jeet to wait nearby until she is done. I'm sorry, it's not Jeet, it's Gomti. So she tells Gomti to wait nearby until the work is done, delaying his lunch. So as Gomti leaves, Jeet strikes up a conversation with Pempem, unaware of their rivalry. Pempem, oblivious to Jeet's motives, befriends him, inviting him over, and even agreeing to paint his portrait. So Gomti is leaving the place, and Jeet is gaining a kind of a conversation with Pempem. And Pempem is not aware that this is Jeet, right? So, so both of them get friends with each other, and he promises that she would get ready with a portrait of Jeet soon. Meanwhile, Gomti encounters Chomo near the Kutub. So Chomo was very calm, and he somehow persuades Gomti to engage in a conversation. And so during the conversation, you could find that Chomo is asking about questioning about Panchan Lama and certain possessions. Though Gomti is cautious and he deflects the conversation, he realizes too late that Chomo is armed. Only later did he understand that Chomo is an armed person, and he is not a monk, he is not soft spoken as he understood earlier. And now, ultimately, Chomo kills Gomti and throws his body from the height. Got it? And whereas on the other hand side, in the meantime, you could find Nirupama investigating the entire flat of Pempem. At Pempem's flat, Nirupama discovers burnt papers and a recorded radio broadcast discussing the army and soldiers. She also spots a pistol and is surprised not to find any typewritten documents because she found a typewriter there. And despite the presence of two Hermes portable typewriters, she was surprised. Why not any typewritten documents? So on her way back, she witnesses Gomti's sudden death and hears a haunting, unfamiliar marching tune. So she was very much scared by the incident, and later she gets back to Jeet. And only later she decodes the word copter, which she assumes to a helicopter. She found certain burnt papers over there, right? So she could find that it's a word copter and it can be a helicopter, she suggests to Jeet later. And now you found out that Jeet and Pempam are now friends, right? So Jeet sneaks into Pempam's apartment using a fake key again, with the same key that he gave to Nirupama once. He uses that to enter Pempam's apartment, and he swaps a typewriter with a lookalike typewriter that he purchased earlier, right? He takes away her typewriter and replaces another one. So later he visits her again. When Pempam was inside her flat, he meets her later, and he starts discussing the portrait. And their conversation turns flirtatious. So he was actually flirting with her, and he poses for the portrait as well. Outside, you could see that Tianan spots Jeet alive near the Olympic chambers. So he was very much shocked. So according to Tianan, he has killed Jeet, isn't it? So now, after spotting Jeet near the Olympic chambers, he informs Chomo. He was very much scared. He was very much shocked and surprised. And Chomo, on the other hand, using his binoculars, he watches Jeet in Pempam's apartment. So now he was very much irritated. He was furious. So he never thought that Pempam would befriend Jeet, and he thinks her to be a traitor now. So enraged, he was very much enraged, and Chomo calls Pempam, accusing her of betrayal, and demands that she bring Jeet to the Yangtze restaurant. So I talked about Yangtze restaurant earlier, right? So it was his team's hideout place. So Pempam, stunned by Jeet's true identity. So now when Chomo revealed that this is whom Jeet is, now Pempam is totally confused, and she was scared. And knowing Jeet's true identity, she was actually watching him, and she was trying to safeguard herself from him. But Jeet was very much casual, and he was pretending as if he doesn't know anything about all this. And so now he also wanted to join her in Yangtze restaurant, but thinking that Jeet might have any other plans to kill her or anything else like that, she redirects him to another one restaurant, and this further provokes Chomo. So now Chomo is very much furious. Why? Because he directed Pempam to take Jeet to Yangtze restaurant, but you could find that Pempam is taking him to another restaurant. So now it actually provoked Chomo's fury. So now Chomo has plans. Chomo gathers evidence of Jeet and Pempam's meetings, and he brands her as a traitor. And now he is planning to send all the evidences and proofs to Peking. So he threatens Pempam with torture unless she becomes his mistress, revealing his intentions to steal the treasure from the Ragyabas monastery to fund a lavish life abroad. So now the plan of Chomo is revealed. Chomo didn't want to take the possessions of the monastery into China, but on the other hand, he wanted to take the possessions abroad, and he wanted to live a luxurious life over there. Got it? And he wanted Pempam to be his mistress. Got it? So Pempam now refuses. See, I can't come with you, and she insults him. Chomo now escalates further by threatening her pet cat Ting-a-ling, forcing her unwilling submission. So he threatens that he will kill her cat. He takes the cat into his hands, and he blackmails her that he will be just throwing it from the top. And you know that Pempem is very much fond of a loving cat, and so now he obviously she had no other go but she had to submit herself. So Chomo continues to abuse and harass her, leaving her no choice but to submit. Meanwhile, Chomo's men abduct Nirupama Pandit from Jeet's home when Jeet actually had a meeting at PK's place. And during that time, they kidnap Nirupama from his home and they seize the typewriter. But Jeet has already decoded the messages. Got it? So Jeet identifies it is Komo Jung who is accompanying Pempem as he gains discussion with PK. So he was talking to PK about the American marching tune, and immediately PK says that okay, that is none other than Chomo Jung himself. He uses that, he sings that, whistles that American marching tune, and so now Jeet finds that it is Chomo Jung who is acting as a Chinese agent over here. And now PK was very much surprised and he warns Jeet about Komo's ruthlessness. Also, they talk about finding way into the monastery because it's not easy to enter into the Ragyabas monastery, and it's actually too very risky to enter the monastery. So PK is confident of finding out ways to the Ragyabas monastery. So Jeet finds, now getting back home, Jeet finds that Nirupama is being kidnapped. And Jeet goes to Yangtze restaurant all alone. So he was very much confident that she must have been taken over there. So Jeet is led to a special chamber with drops of drug being mixed into his soup. So Jeet acts unconscious after making a show of drinking the soup. Actually, he didn't drink the soup. So the waiters, the Chinese waiters, believe that he is truly unconscious and they take him or they carry him to the top floor. But Jeet tricks the Chinese waiters over there and reaches the room where Nirupama is stuck. So when Tien An tries to kill her, Jeet saves her from Tien An and his men after a brief fight. So a stunt is taking place between Tien An and his men and Jeet, and so finally he was able to save Nirupama. Now comes the climax. So Chomo, Pempem and Tingaling, the cat, they are making their entry into the Ragyabas monastery. Chomo kills 8 lamas who were there at the monastery. He fires at them. After that, Chomo relishes at the sight of the treasures and plans to escape from the monastery with Pempem and the looted treasure. So he was mesmerized by all the golds and diamonds and emeralds and rubies and pearls, and he was actually very briefly dreaming about his luxurious life back in any other foreign places. So he warns Pempem that she can never get back to China because of the false allegations about her. So he wants Pempem not to dream about going back to China. So you can't go back to Li Heng to be his mistress again. I have framed false allegations against you that you are having a connection with the Indian intelligence. So obviously you won't be able to get into China, because if you get back to China, you'll be tortured and killed. You will end up as a prisoner, right? So now he also ill-treats Pempem and insults her, thereby indicating her subordinated status as his mistress. So now whatever he wished for, I mean the possessions of the Ragyabas monastery, he has dreamed about having Pempem as his mistress. Both of the dreams have been almost accomplished, and he plans to leave the monastery as soon as possible, I mean within an hour. A helicopter now arrives, which Komo assumes to be Li Heng's and suspects that Pempem has betrayed him, because according to Chomo's plan, his escape was aimed an hour before the arrival of Li Heng's helicopter. So he would escape with the possessions and Pempem, and when the helicopter of Li Heng arrives, it will be too late. So, but they find that the helicopter is Indian, and Jeet along with Nirupama land into the monastery. So now he finds that the helicopter belongs to the Indian intelligence. So now obviously he will attack Jeet, right? So Jeet arrives, inviting attacks from Chomo. But to his surprise, Jeet's planned explosion shattered the entire staircase of the monastery. So the monastery staircase stands as a connection between the outside world, right? So it was completely shattered, in which Chomo was actually standing. So the staircase crashed down into the valley along with Chomo. Meanwhile, Nirupama enters the monastery and witnesses the treasure, and she also meets Pempem. So Nirupama was to be shot by Pempem. So Pempem was aiming to shoot at Nirupama, and the explosion of the staircase terrifies the cat Tingaling, which might have crashed down to death. But Pempem's cat, she was very much close to Tingaling, and Pempem saves the cat and loses her life amidst the rubble. So Nirupama takes hold of the cat Tingaling immediately, and later she meets Jeet, who comes into the monastery, and obviously his life was saved. In the end, the perilous situation concludes with Jeet and Nirupama, both the agents of Indian intelligence, successfully securing the treasure from the Chinese operatives. So, with this, our presentation comes to an end. Hope you understood the summary. This is just a summary, and this particular essay is assigned to the first years of the TANSK syllabus. So, hope you understood the summary, and this is Wahida signing off. Thank you.